Hey, what's up, guys? Teach Me Grappling, Brian Peterson here. And as you can see, I'm at home and I'm not in the gym. But, during this time where we're all locked inside, and I just released a couple videos of my meeting with Jake Shannon, at a catch wrestling camp workshop. Um, I hope you guys enjoyed that. There was a really long discussion I had with him. I put out basically two roughly 40-minute videos. We went nonstop for, I guess, man, almost like an hour and a half. We were together a little bit longer, but I didn't capture everything on video. But I'm really happy that I was able to capture what I did. And I just wanted to give my thoughts. And, that again, I don't even remember what month that was. It was last year, um, but it's been a while, and I got to re-listen to our conversation, Jake and my conversation, and I wanted to, basically say what's on my mind. And there was definitely some things that I didn't get out in that conversation. I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of back and forth. And again, if you guys haven't seen it, you can always check that out. But I feel like I did get out what I wanted, but there was more. I felt like I had a little bit more in me, and I, I, I wanted to be as respectful as possible because I am a martial artist, and I understand. I was taught respect from the very beginning, but at the same time, I also came from a time. I came up in the '90s with the Gracie Challenge, and the whole dojo storming was a real thing. But that's not my MO. You know, I try to respectfully as possible educate someone, and I do feel like I was trying to make some attempts to educate you guys as well as Jake. Um, Obviously, when we come to the table, I like it was an exchange. Like, he said some things, and I learned some stuff. I hope that he learned some stuff from what I was saying. Um, but obviously, in the end, we both go our separate ways, and I probably didn't change my mind, and he probably didn't change his. So the only thing I can do though is share this conversation with you, and then hopefully I can change your mind. And what is the point? I don't want to change your mind so you think like I do. I want to make all of you guys better. And that's what I think is most important. And I feel like I want to make martial arts better. That's one of the goals, right? Like, it's why when I train and I do jujitsu or grappling or whatever you want to call it, if you call what I do catch wrestling, it's definitely got a mix of wrestling with the jujitsu. So that's why I use the word grappling all the time. Um, I'm always trying to improve it. I'm trying to make it better. And what my thoughts on catch wrestling, because I know I have some of you guys that watch the channel that are either that you do catch wrestling or you're a fan of catch wrestling. I know I have one guy in particular. I don't remember his name exactly, but he's always commenting about. He's obviously like really into wrestling, and he obviously likes catch, and I get it, and it's cool. If you guys like to follow catch and you like it more than jujitsu, that's okay. I'm sure that's why a lot of people like me, because I'm like different. I'm not the typical jiu-jitsu guy. I combine my wrestling, and again, I'll just state this. I've wrestled folk style, I've wrestled freestyle, and I've wrestled Greco-Roman. So, I'm familiar with all those styles. Being a jiu-jitsu black belt, I'm able to kind of combine all of that. And then my little bit of experience in judo and learning from, I won't say I ever trained in sambo or catch wrestling, but I've learned. I've definitely learned. I've studied a lot of videotapes. I've learned from a lot of different people. I have other friends that are practitioners of those arts, and it's it's something that I've tried to use. I want to take the good and combine it and form it into my style, which is like what the martial arts is, guys. Like, I want to say this, like, the martial arts, everyone puts them into boxes and they say, this is the box that's called Jiu-jitsu, or this is the box that's called catch wrestling, or Kung Fu, or whatever. And really, my opinion, you're not doing Jiu-jitsu. If you think you're doing Jiu-jitsu, you're not. You know what you're doing? You're doing your instructor's version of Jiu-jitsu, what he calls Jiu-jitsu. Every instructor is unique in their own. So we call it a style, we name it, because we have to call it something. But I want to state that it's your instructor's version. And so every time you have a new instructor, even if you watch a YouTube video, if you watch some of my moves on video on this channel, you are learning what I have up here. So you now are getting a piece of me. And guess what? I got that piece from somewhere else. I got it from other instructors, but I have smashed it all together into what I have. And that's what you're getting when you learn from someone. It's a beautiful thing. So really, we're not all the same. It's not like jiu-jitsu is all the same or catch wrestling's all the same, and I don't believe that. But there is a general trend in the arts, and the general trend is kind of like the basics. When I teach jiu-jitsu basics, I'm teaching the same stuff that most every school will teach. When I teach wrestling, I'm teaching what most wrestling schools teach. But because I have a unique blend of wrestling and jiu-jitsu, I mix them. And that's why a lot of people feel like what I do is similar to catch, or I have like a catch influence. So, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. I play both sides all the time. I argue with the wrestlers that they need to learn jiu-jitsu. I argue with the jiu-jitsu guys that they need to learn how to wrestle. And I think we all need to keep an open mind. And just because I use those two, because that's what I'm most familiar with, I also believe the same of judo, sambo, and even catch wrestling. Again, back in the day, I learned from some catch wrestling videotapes. We trained with a lot of different people back in the day in the 90s. And there was a lot of eclectic grappling styles I was, introduced to. And I tried to use everything I could. I tried it all out. Now, maybe there's some things that I could get better at. Maybe I didn't give it a fair shake. There's definitely some techniques. Like, I'm just going to say it. Like, back in the day, the catch wrestlers would teach us that if you got inside the guard or the leg scissor, if you're in someone's guard, that you could just stand up and basically step over and put them in a Boston Crab. Now, that move would be seen, let's say, in a pro wrestling, match, like a, theatrical pro wrestling. When I say pro wrestling, I mean like WWE stuff. They would do a Boston Crab in that position, but anybody who trains at a high level, or even not even a high level, just a decent level, it becomes very difficult to take somebody from their guard who doesn't want to go over to their stomach and force them over to their belly and then into a Boston Crab situation. But that was an example of a catch wrestling move. Again, popular in pro wrestling. Where did pro wrestling learn it from? From the catch in the original catch wrestling. Now, do I believe that you can't do that? No. I've done the move before. I've put guys in that position before. I'm skilled enough to put a lot of people in that position. What I'm trying to say is you're not usually going to see, and when I say usually, I just stuck that word in there, you're not going to see that in general. 2 black belts, I don't care if the guy's been training in catch wrestling for his whole life. He is not going to take another guy his level that does jiu-jitsu and put him in a Boston Crab. That's one reason why, guys, you don't see that in the UFC. Now, if you found it in MMA, a Boston Crab, which there has been, it's easily explainable. It was done to a guy who has no understanding. So a jiu-jitsu guy who doesn't understand catch could fall victim to a catch wrestling technique. That's why we all have to study everything that is out there. But the point still needs to be driven home. If you understand it, it doesn't quite work. Now, that does not apply to everything. For example, black belts will still get caught in triangle chokes from the guard. It's maybe not as common as a white belt getting caught in a triangle, but black belts can still get caught. You will see 10 times the amount of triangles, probably way more than that, than you will see Boston crabs. And you're going to see more of these techniques. And this comes down to high percentage techniques. That's why I think Jiu-Jitsu is a little bit more progressive than catch wrestling, that it's evolving. It's always evolving. Now, part of that is also because Jiu-Jitsu is in the mainstream. It's everywhere. It's being practiced everywhere. It's a mainstream sport, and it's in the UFC. Most of the fighters are training it. So they are carrying that flag and driving it further and further and further, plowing the way for the future guys that practice, and they're making it better all the time. Now, what's crappy about catch wrestling, it's sad for catch wrestling. I'm not saying catch wrestling is crappy. I'm saying what sucks for them is that they don't have enough guys carrying the flag. So if we had more catch wrestling schools, we would be able to test out more things and improve catch wrestling. And this is what I was trying to get through to Jake, that we need more of it. But one of the biggest points, if you guys watched that meeting that I was trying to drive home, was that there's a serious problem when it comes to the pin. And I got a comment about the pin, and people are trying to explain to me about the pin, about how originally if you pinned a guy on his back in battle, then your buddy could come along and stab him with a sword, or it meant that you could finish him with strikes, or you could finish him with a weapon. Now, that's totally not true, by the way. It's ridiculous. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that you couldn't get stabbed with a sword if you're on the bottom, or get kicked in the head by the guy's buddy. That's not what I'm disputing. What I'm trying to say is that's just a terrible, terrible argument for arguing that we should always have pins in grappling. And again, I tried to explain this to Jake. So let me try to unpack this. Pins already exist. We have what's called passing the guard in Jiu-Jitsu. The same in Judo. When they have a pin in Judo, you have to pass the guard. You cannot be inside the guy's closed guard or in the guy's half guard and call it a pin, because you are not dominating him yet. Now, let's get away from Judo for a second. In Jiu-Jitsu, when you pass the guard, you are getting points for immobilizing your opponent on their back in a dominant control position. You gain points for the mount. You gain points for passing the guard to side control or to north-south. Now, it just doesn't end the match. And why do we do that? Why do we not end the match? It's because it then takes away, if you end the match with a pin, you negate all the need to learn submissions. There's almost no need, because a pin is almost always required when you're on top in order to get into a position to go for a submission. Almost always. So of course, like let's say you wanted to submit somebody and you're in their guard. Well, you're probably not going to submit them in their guard unless you drop back for a leg lock, which is possible. But the basic strategy is pass the guard. Once you pass the guard, you go to side control. Then you're going to go for a submission. Let's say you want a Kimura, or you want an Americana, or you want a baseball choke, okay? Or you want to go to knee on belly and go over to the mount. You want to hit an armbar. You want to hit a triangle. Moving on. There's so many moves. If you want to hit those moves, they all require a pin first. So if you have a pin in the match, there's no need to learn a submission hold. That's part of the reason why wrestling has pins and they don't have submissions. Now, the other part of it is submissions are just plain dangerous, right? So even in my years, wrestling has changed the rules, and they have made it slightly less brutal than it used to be. Even back in the 90s, we could figure four the head when a guy was on his back. We weren't penalized the moment we did a body scissor. in wrestling. Nowadays, they won't let anyone do a body scissor at all. The second you start to scissor your legs around your opponent's body in folk style, they're going to call it illegal. And it doesn't. You don't even have to be squeezing them that hard. If the referee sees your legs straighten, they start calling you. So, they've made it less brutal because submissions are dangerous, right? There's no choking in wrestling. All these things, they make it less brutal in some sense. But the pin is the king in wrestling. And it's a beautiful thing for the sport of wrestling. Remember, I'm a wrestler through and through. I have not left the sport. I do the sport every day. And, I'm coaching kids every day on this. But the thing that I know, because I come from both, I have both. So I know this to be true, guys. Again, in my 26 years of grappling altogether, wrestling and jiu-jitsu, when you have the pin and it ends the match, it will make an opponent fight to go to his belly because he has to avoid being pinned, like a wrestling match. Any wrestler knows when they get into submissions, they turn their back and they get choked about 5,000 times. Hopefully not that long. And then they learn, oh, I need to use a different way to deal with this. If they do end up on the bottom, it's not always good to turtle. Sometimes it's better to get your guard or get a half guard. And then from there, work for a sweep or work for a scramble to get back to your feet or work some type of reversal from there. Or work a submission from there. There's actually submissions from bottom side control. As much as a lot of guys say, no, you should need position before submission. Hey, I'm all over the place, guys. I'm all about position before submission. And at the same time, I'm all about going after submission when it's there. So the reality is it's a game of chess. And if I get a checkmate, I don't need position. But the strategy is still there. You should be teaching your students to go for position first. It's a smart way to play. You don't want to just be jumping after submission like they do in submission-only tournaments. I don't think submission-only tournaments are the best way to make a well-balanced grappler. However, submission-only tournaments are great to increase your attack ability when it comes to submissions and the submission game, and also your defense. Now, if catch wrestling has competitions, which they do, they're rare, but they happen. I've watched some of their competitions. If you're going to avoid the pin by going to your stomach, now you are in a situation where you are always turtling. In a street fight or an MMA fight, I don't care which, this can be very dangerous. Just because in MMA, a lot of guys turtle and they just turn their back a lot. Remember, a big part of this is because the rules allow them to do this much more safely. There's no strikes to the back of the spine. You cannot strike the back of the head. If you are on someone's back with hooks or without, and a guy turtles and he just covers up and holds his ears, remember, every referee before an MMA fight in the back, in a locker room, they tell the fighters. They talk about the rules of MMA. They usually mention like a set of headphones, around the ears and then straight up here. If you strike behind the headphones, you're striking illegally to the back of the head. As long as you make contact with an ear, that's usually what they say, a fist. If it makes contact with the ear, it's a legal blow. Once it misses the ear, it's now an illegal blow. You are striking the back of the head or the spine. Now, that rule in itself right there protects a lot of grapplers, wrestler or otherwise, while they turn their back. If we're allowed to strike the back of the head, it is very sensitive, guys. I've been hit in the back of the head before. You do not want to get hit there. Okay, I've been in pancration fights with open hand slaps to the back of my head back in the early days when the referees weren't even watching out for that. Back of the head wasn't even a big deal back then in the 90s. And if you got slapped in the back of the head, it would ring your bell. So, guys, the back of the head it can be dangerous. Now, I'm still coherent. I don't think I have any bad effects from those days. I hope, but never know, right? Um, but I can tell you, when I got hit in the back of the head, it rung my bell. It rung my bell hard, quick and fast. And for a second, I wasn't even there. And a guy, all he did was open hand slap me. So remember, turtling and turning your back is not always the best thing to do. But in modern MMA, with rounds where you can just scramble and get back up, and some of these guys are just great wrestlers. They know how to get back up, and that's a great thing. You got to know when to get up. However, it does not mean that the best thing to do is to always just turn your back. In catch wrestling, if you're always avoiding a pin, you're going to have more fights in the turtle position, and then all the guy has to worry about is protecting for the chokes, okay, and neck cranks, and the entries that come from that position, okay? Now, it basically, what it does is it takes away a piece of the fight game, the guard, and it just pulls it right out of the fight game, which anybody who watches MMA knows that the guard is a huge part of the grappling game. It's a major part. Any wrestler, everybody talks about how the wrestlers do the best in MMA. I'm one of them. I'm one of them, guys. I argue it all the time. I'm a supporter of wrestling. All these wrestlers that fight MMA and do well in the UFC, guess what? They've all done Jiu-jitsu, okay? And then very few, maybe you could argue, have done some other grappling style. But most of them all practice Jiu-jitsu, okay? So they know about all these submissions. When they first walk into a gym, they all get tapped out, guys. A wrestler without submission skills, I don't care if he's an Olympic gold medalist. Henry Cejudo, okay? Triple C. That dude got tapped out so many times, okay, when he first started. You guys got to understand that. You don't just take a wrestler, an amateur wrestler, and then just all of a sudden he does MMA and he's great. There's a process they all got to go through. Now, I will admit, wrestlers do better than straight up jiu-jitsu guys because wrestlers have the wrestling piece of the puzzle, and then they learn jiu-jitsu and they lay it on top. But you know what they also do? Every wrestler that does MMA at a high level knows this. They start to realize that there's some wrestling moves that they're just going to have to abandon because they aren't that useful for MMA or for sport grappling. Because when submissions are involved, they are bad ideas. Now, it doesn't mean that there's never a scenario. That's not what I'm saying. But as a whole, they start to learn that they're going to have to stop doing that. Okay? Again, the catch wrestling tournaments, I've watched several matches, guys. I've digested. And there are so many times that these positions are just, they would just lose. And then what's funny is because both guys are catch wrestlers, neither guy knows how to finish. Like one guy can't really get away, and the other wrestler that's on top doesn't know how to finish because he hasn't been schooled in the art of submissions enough. They're both wrestlers. It's kind of like when Kung Fu fights Kung Fu looks great. When Kung Fu fights an MMA guy, all of a sudden he's exposed. If you want to find out if catch wrestling is really, really effective, what we need to do is we need those guys to go either fight in a Abu Dhabi style or something. It doesn't have to be those rules, but a submission game with other grappling styles and mix them. It's kind of like kickboxing. We need the Muay Thai guys to fight the American kickboxers. We need to fight the Chinese Wushu guys. We need to fight the Japanese karate guys. We need to have them all fight, have limited or no rules, and let's see what happens. And what ends up happening is they all learn from each other. The American kickboxers, they were kicking above the waist, started to learn a lot more about kicking the legs. The Muay Thai guys, they weren't always the kings all the time, guys. They learned how to do different styles of kicks. Instead of just everything being a front teep or a round kick or roundhouse kick, They started to learn how to use all the multitude of kicks of all the martial arts. Okay, and now the best guys, they do it all. Everybody learns. So what I wanted to ask Jake was, catch wrestling, how has it evolved? Has it evolved? And you know, has jiu-jitsu learned from catch? 100%. 100%, right? If you just take, for example, Eddie Bravo and the Twister comes from wrestling. And now it's pretty much a move a lot of jiu-jitsu guys use. And so it's evolved. What about all the Danaher Death Squad and Gordon Ryan and Gary Tonin and Eddie Cummings and the leg locks? Look, back in the day, everybody would say, oh, you're a Sambo guy. You're doing leg locks. That's what people would say. Oh, he knows that Sambo stuff. Guys, whether it comes from Sambo or not, it doesn't matter. Now, I'm not at all disputing if it did or not, but my point is this. Guess what? Jiu-jitsu guys have leg locks now. Sambo doesn't have a monopoly on it. Catch wrestling doesn't have a monopoly on neck cranks. Okay? The best grapplers in the world right now use all of them. They will take whatever you give them. And that's what we should all be looking for. And again, my problem with catch is that when you take away or the ability to be on your back and grapple from there by having pins and having it end the match. If you want to score points, I'm all with it. I'm with it. I'm all about top control, guys. But if you want to end the match with it, you've now just changed the game so much. Much like judo. How much time do they get on the mat in judo? And then ask yourself, why do judo guys struggle with newaza versus jiu-jitsu guys? Why do judo black belts oftentimes, not everybody, but oftentimes a judo black belt will struggle with even a decent blue belt in jiu-jitsu on the ground? Now, of course the jiu-jitsu guy can't do takedowns with the judo guy or the wrestler. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about why judo has submissions. Why aren't they as good at the ground submissions? Unless that's all they practice. Unless you talk about Kosen Judo. So it's because the sport and the game doesn't allow ground grappling for that long. They stand the matchup. Why do freestyle wrestlers not know all the ground techniques that folk style wrestlers know? Because they don't spend that much time on the mat. But I'll tell you what, freestyle wrestlers have more ability on their feet with neutral position, with the takedowns. And that's proven because they can do suplexes. They can do all different throws. No banning on throws, okay, other than flat out trying to spike your opponent on their head. And, as long as you take an arc with your throws, that's perfectly fine in freestyle wrestling or Greco-Roman. But in freestyle wrestling, those guys can't grapple on the ground like the folk style wrestlers can, But they have all kinds of great ability to do stand-up techniques, takedown techniques. So guys, it's where you put your time. Now, why do I weigh so much on the submission? Why is the submission so important? And I'll tell you why. It's because the submission is the fight ender. When you guys watch MMA and one person is on their back, oftentimes the person with the guard, if he's really good like Tony Ferguson or a Kenny Florian, he can throw elbows from his guard and cut up the guy who's inside the guard. And then while the guy on top is getting cut, he then ends up getting caught in a submission because he doesn't even want to be on top anymore. If you're dangerous from the bottom, if you get in Ryan Hall's guard, you are not safe. If you are in Damian Maia's guard, you are not safe. It is real. There is no reason why we should teach, okay, unless you just want to preserve the art. But for the betterment of martial arts, it is not going to improve martial arts by saying, let's not do, on your back. If you're pinned, you lose. It's not a good argument. It's very similar to Taekwondo without strikes to the head. If we can't punch the face, I don't think that does any good for Taekwondo other than making you just amazing at kicks because you can kick the head in Olympic style Taekwondo. It does make you good at kicks. Okay? It does make you good at kicks, but it does not help your overall fight game. It makes you come back a little bit. So pins might make you better at controlling your opponent on their back, but ultimately it makes us much weaker, and mostly not because of the offensive guy pinning. No, it's because now you have a defensive partner or opponent that wants to turn back over to his stomach every single time, and he will not fight from his back. So you lose a huge part of the fight game, which is passing the guard and learning how to attack from the bottom, from your back, which you need to do many, many times in a fight, whether it be on the street or not. You can give me all the concrete examples of, oh, it's harder to shrimp, it's harder to move. Guys, in a real fight, you have adrenaline flow. If you have to hip escape and move and pivot to hit an armbar, you're going to do it, okay? Are there dangers? Hell yeah. But just the same, if you roll over to your knees and now you have a guy hammer fisting and elbowing the back of your head, you also have issues. Sometimes you must go to guard and protect yourself. And I am in no way saying that jiu-jitsu is the best. I'm saying let's blend it all and let's find out what the best is by combining all the best of all the worlds and put them together. And that includes catch wrestling, which I am a supporter of. Now, I still think if people want to have the sport and do it and preserve it for history purposes, it's all good. It's all good. But we have to cross-train. We have to work together. I would love to see someone mention this. I would love to see Curran Jacobs compete in Abu Dhabi. I would love to see it. Again, he's a great wrestler. And I also want to see, here's the thing, guys. I want to see the catch wrestlers develop someone who doesn't already have wrestling experience. We need them to develop their schools and develop their art more, grow, so that they can produce more guys. See, the difference is in jiu-jitsu, there are jiu-jitsu guys that are very good that have never wrestled. Just take Marcelo Garcia, for example, and he's incredible. Take Roger Gracie, it doesn't matter. Take a lot of guys. There's a lot of jiu-jitsu guys. Damian Maia, now he's learned how to wrestle, but what I'm saying is like they weren't originally wrestlers. But they can still be pretty damn good. In MMA and grappling, they can be great. I have not seen any, personally, really good catch wrestlers that came from catch. Straight catch. If you take Curran Jacobs, he's a wrestler. If you take Josh Barnett, he was a wrestler. Okay? What I'm saying is wrestling is a very well-developed, call it a martial art, sport martial art. I'm a wrestler. I want to see catch wrestling, the art of catch wrestling, develop their own. And I know that it's not quite fair because there just isn't enough of these great instructors of catch wrestling out there to build their guys up. But that's what they need to do. And I think that that's what they need to do for respect for their own, you know. Nobody's going to respect Aikido until Aikido starts producing some Steven Seagals that can actually throw somebody with a wrist lock. You know, if you want, think about karate got a ton of respect once Machida started kicking ass. And even though Machida also cross-trained and learned, he's a jiu-jitsu black belt and all that. But he was a karate guy that became UFC champion. That gave karate a lot of respect. And I think it was great. It was well-deserved too. I think the martial art world needed that. So I'm a supporter, guys. I know I might sound like sometimes like I'm shitting on it, but I really am a supporter. But I do question some things. And I think it's good to question. We need to do that. I question jiu-jitsu all the time. I'm constantly questioning it. I question the things that I do. I know that I do so many things sometimes, guys, that are fancy, and I question them constantly. But this is a good thing. This makes us all better. So please, guys, understand. I love all the martial arts. I do love, in particular, to the martial arts that focus on more effective techniques, higher percentage, let's call it. So I want to see Catch produce some more guys, and I want to see it do better. I want to see it grow. So call me Catch Wrestling sometimes, because sometimes I am. So I definitely use a lot of their techniques. So it is a part of me. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this little rant or discussion I just had with you guys. I know you don't get to speak back to me, but I'm sure you can comment down below if you guys have any questions. I'll try to answer if I can. Thank you guys so much for supporting, especially during this tough time with our little pandemic we're going through. Hopefully it'll be over soon. I know it's probably not, but I think you guys all share what I mean. Again, I want to thank Jake Shannon for the experience. It was fun, and hope you guys enjoyed. So thank you guys so much. Teach Me Grappling. I'll see you guys next time with more great stuff. I'm out.